Hi everyone, this is Ken. Welcome back to another episode of the Man to Man Coach podcast. I have my good friend and co-host Mason with me.
What's up, guys?
Mason, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Nice week of football. Nice week in December, almost getting to Christmas time. Really excited.
Yeah, that's good. I agree. It was a nice week of football. This is a very interesting time in the sport since we're closer to playoffs. I think that we're still trying to figure out what teams are good, but we definitely kind of know what teams are bad. So what we're gonna do is that we have made a list of four disappointing and four disappointing players and coach each. We do not know what each other's list is though. So usually in these videos we make a list and we kind of talk about it and the other person responds. But I thought it'd be more neat to kind of do like a blind reaction. So we're gonna say who the player is, and then the other person's gonna respond and talk about it. We do not know any prior knowledge. And I thought this would be cool to have more of a genuine reaction here and kind of go with that. So Mason, if you want to say your first player or coach, and then I'll kind of say my thoughts on it.
Yeah, so my first player coach, we haven't really talked about him too much on the podcast, I feel like this year, but definitely someone I think is disappointing, which is Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I mean Saquon came in as a high tier fantasy running back. I actually had him in my early MVP conversation. I think this whole Giants team had a lot of hype behind it because I thought that, improved defense, they're going to be really good. I thought that, Kenny Galladay was going to be really good. He's been really disappointing. And I thought Saquon was going to be good because I thought the Giants want to run the ball because of that good defense. But that just hasn't happened, unfortunately. It's kind of weird because everyone loves Saquon drafted so high, and now people are like, man, it was a mistake. So I'm like, what is it? It seems like people are backtracking. I think that half of it is kind of the Giants coaching staff. Like I watched the Giants Dolphins game and Saquon was hardly involved in the game plan. And I don't know. I think some of it's his injury stuff. I think definitely that the Giants as a whole offensively have been disappointing. Kadarius Toney's been the only bright spot. Kenny Galladay's just I don't know where he's at. Daniel Jones is just blah, just kind of blah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think Saquon could be better. I think he could be traded. I think that's definitely something I would love to see, like the Ravens make a big trade for him. Saquon gets injured, so he'll fit right in with Baltimore. But you know, I just think it's been more. I don't think it's Saquon himself. What do you think of him, Mason? What's kind of your take on him?
Yeah, so like Saquon Barkley is kind of like grouped in with like basically the Giants offense, I think. Um, he's been a product of a bad system. And he's also dealt with injuries, but I also think there's just been a lot of games where like there's just times where he needs to get it going like on the ground or even through the air, and he seems to struggle. Because I know in his rookie year he was really great at finding that open hole and just bursting right through it. But I feel like maybe since coming off that ACL and then his high ankle sprain this season, maybe he's not as explosive as he once was, which is kind of concerning for how young he is. But no, I like what you said. I mean, it's kind of the entire Giants offense, really. I mean, they fired Jason Garrett midway through the season, so that's usually not a good sign. If you're firing your offensive coordinator, I mean, Kenny Galladay, like you said, very disappointing. Signed him to a massive contract. Hasn't contributed. The only good spot really in that offense has been Kadarius Toney, and he even can't really stay healthy on the field. But yeah, no, I think Saquon Barkley has lost sort of his explosiveness to find that open hole and really like burst right through it and get a 20, 30-yard run. But I also think part of that blame has to do with the scheme he's in, and it's really not helping him out. And I really like what you said. I think the Giants really need to look into trading him this offseason just because I think it's time for both parties to move on, just because I think Barkley would flourish in a new system. And I think the Giants probably shouldn't extend him to a massive contract due to his injury concerns.
If you think that he didn't have the injuries, do you think he would still regress? Because I don't know. I think injuries, definitely is a good
Hmm.
part of it, but I don't know. I feel like himself, he doesn't seem to have that vision you would like. I don't know. I think sometimes he's had trouble translating kind of that smoothness from college to the NFL. Yeah, he has those big highlight plays, awesome. That's cool, but you need kind of more of that vision, that ability to cut back or spin or whatever. And I just don't think he has that. So I think some of it's just kind of like Reggie Bush coming out of college a couple years ago. He's a hyped up college back. He was actually at college and was like good in the NFL, not great. I think that's kind of what Saquon's at. I think sometimes when you're an explosive back in college, yeah, you're gonna have some nice moments in the NFL for sure. Saquon's had some. That's cool, but you need to kind of have more of that vision. I think sometimes these explosive backs don't carry that over.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I also think Saquon Barkley struggles from he usually has a one big play a game, and that's kind of it for him. He's kind of not a guy that you look at like on 3rd and 3 and you give him the ball and he'll go ahead and get you those 3 yards you need for the first down. He's more of just like, I got a 40-yard run for the day, and now I'm pretty much gonna get 3 or 4 yard carries the rest of the game. And you have guys like Derrick Henry who just put their head down every single play. Jonathan Taylor, for example, this year, players like that who are just like consistently good throughout the game. And I think Barkley struggles from really just having 1 or 2 big plays a game. Then you really can't get anything else going for him.
Yeah, Derrick Henry's kind of similar in a way. I think Henry does a bit more consistent, but I see what you mean. All right, Mason. So that's um who your person is. My person is it's gonna be a coach, Matt Rule of the Carolina Panthers, the head coach there. They fired the offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, but I want to know your take on Matt Rule.
Yeah, Matt Rule, basically the entire Panthers coaching staff, for obvious reasons, Joe Brady got fired. The entire coaching staff's been pretty disappointing. I actually had him on my secondary list, so that's good that you brought him up because I definitely think he's been very disappointing this year. He from a year and a half ago, he went from one of the top college candidate coaches and even a top NFL head coach to now looking like he's on the hot seat, if not this year, definitely next year. And I think a big part of that is his college system really hasn't translated over to the NFL. I think they had a nice offensive scheme that they went with in the first year, and then people gave him the benefit of the doubt, saying it's a rebuild year. And then they come into year 2, they pick up Sam Darnold, who it's turning out to be one of the worst trades by far this past NFL season, giving up a 2nd round pick for someone who is like number 3 in interceptions, and he hasn't even played the past 3 weeks. I mean, kind of goes to show how he's played this year. And then they go ahead and get a guy like Cam Newton, has a good game against the Cardinals, then he does horrible a couple weeks later. It's just like this team's very inconsistent. I think a lot of that has to fall on Matt Rule. Even the defense has been really inconsistent. At the beginning of the year, they were known as like the best defense statistically, and then throughout the year they've been kind of floating between the middle of the pack. So I think a big thing is consistency. I don't think he gets the best out of his players. Um, and that could change. He is a young coach in the NFL, so he could definitely have that change. But I think it's concerning because you have young coaches. You have like Sean McVay. His first couple of years, he really got the best out of players like Jared Goff, Cooper Kupp, Cliff Kingsbury this year, getting the best out of James Conner, Kyler Murray. But you really haven't seen that with Matt Rule. And he has a very talented team. I feel like there's no really big excuse. You got DJ Moore, who's honestly been pretty well this year. Robbie Anderson has been disappointing, I will say that, but I think the biggest thing is just not getting consistency out of his players, and his scheme really has not translated over to the NFL.
Yeah, like we said, that he doesn't get the best of his players because remember when he was introduced, people were excited. It was like, okay, that he was a really hyped up coaching prospect. And I don't know. I just don't see him motivating guys like on the sideline. He's just kind of standing there, like he's not really going and talking to his guys, motivating them. He just kind of lacks that energy. I don't know where the loss in translation is because, like you see in the pregame, interviews, but on the game he doesn't really have it. So I don't know. It's just hasn't really worked out. I think that people thought, okay, this is going to be a really kind of cool era in Carolina, but it's just kind of been like, oh. And I think that, they fired Ron Rivera and that rule hasn't worked out. So things are not looking good for the Panthers. I definitely think that it just hasn't worked out. I don't think there's a big overlapping reason. I don't think it's like an Adam Gase thing where he's been terrible. I just think it plainly hasn't worked out. And sometimes that's how it goes in football, unfortunately. Mason, who do you have for your second person?
My second person is another player. I feel like this guy hasn't been getting talked about how disappointing he's been. His team's been pretty good, but I feel like him as a player really needs to step it up, especially if they want to make a playoff push. And that person is Ryan Tannehill of the Tennessee Titans.
Oh yeah, I know we're very different on Tannehill. You are kind of like more okay on him. I really like him. Yeah, he's been disappointing even as a huge Tannehill fan. It's not kind of been there. I think Ryan Tannehill does a lot of things very well. Like he's very accurate over the middle of the field. He's good off of play action. And I think that's worked the past couple of seasons. But what I've seen this year is that I think Tannehill need to step up his game. I just don't think he has. I think that's what it comes down to. I think the Titans kind of people figured them out. Like, okay, you have they're kind of going to run play action. Like the play action isn't as effective. Julio Jones has been a complete disaster there. Um, and I feel like that they need Tannehill to kind of extend the plays more. And I just don't think it's been there a lot of times. He drops back, he throws, oh, the pass is dropped or incomplete or intercepted over the middle. I think that he's just not going through his reads as much. And I think that he's someone that really needs to take that step up this year. I just don't think he did. I also think you maybe move on from him. He's very limited. You can win with a limited quarterback. You always think of Nick Foles with the Eagles Super Bowl run, but that doesn't happen a ton. Jimmy Garoppolo brought the 49ers to Super Bowl. Tannehill and Garoppolo are very comparable, but that's not an everyday situation. So I don't know. I think you move on. I think Tannehill plays probably about a couple more years. I think he'll kind of be a good veteran guy. Like I could see him going to Pittsburgh. That I like that choice though, because the Titans as a whole have just been really disappointing this year, even though they're like 8-4. It's just kind of a lot of issues with them.
Yeah, the Titans are a really weird team for sure. I think they have a good record now, but like longevity wise throughout this year, I don't think it'll work out just because they have their two wide receivers can't stay healthy, and then Derrick Henry's out, and then you have an inconsistent quarterback play, inconsistent defense. I think they're gonna have a good record coming into the playoffs, but I think they're probably gonna be a first round exit in my opinion. I just don't think they have what it takes to the stamina, especially compared to a couple of years ago when they made it to the AFC Championship game. Um, but no, it's kind of weird. Like Ryan Tannehill, he really came to the season. He had a phenomenal year last year. I feel like not a lot of people talk about that, like 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. But this year he's been really disappointing. He's almost doubled his interceptions already this year at 13, only 14 touchdown passes. And I don't know if a big part of that is because Derrick Henry went down. He's kind of struggled without having, like you said, the play action game being there for him. Because like you said, teams have kind of figured out you're either going to run it or you're going to play action. Like we're just going to prepare for you that way. And not only that, but Julio Jones, like you said, that experiment has been horrible. He can't stay healthy, and then when he is healthy, he really has no impact on the game. Unfortunately, for Titans fans. And then AJ Brown, kind of in the same boat as Julio Jones, really has been not on the field as much. When he's played really good though. Won't take that away from him. But yeah, I think Ryan Tannehill, I think his biggest problem is he can't step up when others go down. You see that all the time. You see the Brady's, the Drew Breeses, like Aaron Rodgers, guys like those, the ones who are elite, they step up when others go down. Um, and they can rely on themselves with not as great talent for a couple weeks. And I don't think you've gotten that from Ryan Tannehill this year.
Yeah, it's the whole thing with Derek Carr, right? It's like, yeah, they'll play
Mhm.
well, make some nice plays. That's cool, but we need them to step up. I mean, almost put Derek Carr in this list. It's tough, but like there's this game on Sunday against Washington where Derek Carr checks it down instead of hitting the wide open guy. And it's like, yeah, if you have a guy like Carr, Tannehill, someone Cousins, I think Kirk Cousins takes some more deep shots. But if you have someone like that, you're going to have some good plays, some good passing
Mhm.
games, but you're just not going to extend the game as much and puts more pressure on your team. So, do you like Tannehill to Pittsburgh, or do you think, like, where do you think he's at? Because, I mean, with Najee Harris, I don't know. I could see him going there for like a year and getting them to like a 9-8 record.
Yeah, covering just a little bit of news on the podcast. Big Ben has said he's probably going to be his last year, um, via multiple reports. So I would like Brian Tannehill to the Steelers, especially if they get a. I feel like the Steelers should draft a quarterback, but I don't think any quarterbacks in this draft are really NFL ready. So I think it'd be good to get like a veteran guy to show them the ways. If they get a guy like Corral or like Malik Willis or something like that, or Carson Strong, so I think that would be really good. especially since they have a solid team still, so they can still try to contend for the playoffs. So I think they still have like grounds for a great defense and some good offensive weapons. I do like that a lot.
Yeah, so the person I have is you want someone with the AFC South. I'm gonna go with the NFC South, and that's gonna be Alvin Kamara of the Saints.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara has definitely, especially compared to last year, has been nowhere near as efficient and explosive. I feel like a big part of that has to do with Drew Brees' retirement. I don't think Alvin Kamara has really fitted in with this new offensive scheme that they have working with, especially before Jameis Winston got injured. Jameis Winston is like opposite of Derek Carr and Ryan Tannehill. He takes too many deep shots down the field. And Alvin Kamara really doesn't benefit from that at all. And I think a lot of people didn't talk about like Alvin Kamara has been like a great player, but he's never been an elite runner, in my opinion. I think he's been an elite offensive player, if that makes sense, but he's been more of a balance of the receiving back, running back. He's never been like an elite runner. And that his receiving aspect of the game has kind of been taken away. So teams are more focused on his running game, and it really hasn't been there. He's also dealt with injuries the past couple weeks. But before that, he's been extremely disappointing, especially compared to last year when people were saying he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. And I still think he has potential for that, but I just don't think the scheme they're in right now works for him. And then when Taysom Hill plays, Taysom Hill is kind of like Jameis Winston as well. Taysom Hill will either run it himself or he'll usually take deep shots. Usually doesn't work out well though. For example, he threw 4 interceptions on Thursday night. But I think the biggest thing for his disappointing year is Drew Brees' retirement, because Brees' favorite target was Kamara, and I think Kamara's kind of struggled having to be more of a running back than like a receiving back.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that a lot of players that we said are running backs, it's just the longevity of them. It's like look at Christian McCaffrey, who has this breakout season. Now it's injuries with him. So I wonder if people are like now with Jonathan Taylor, longevity. It's sad though. I do love your answer though, Mace. I think that Kamara has not always been the best runner. He has some nice, like he's just a good player. Like fantasy wise, he gets a lot of like catches, but I just haven't seen that like big play potential from him. I don't know. Yeah, I wanted to say Kamara because it's not like he's been terrible, but I thought it would be interesting to see what you have to say about him. And the Saints, they're kind of irrelevant now with their eh to bad quarterback play. So I wanted to at least, have them discussed a bit. So who's your third person?
My third person, I finally have a head coach. Um, I kind of already know some of your feelings on him, but I think this guy's been really disappointing this year, and that is Pete Carroll of the Seahawks.
Yeah, Pete Carroll. um, gotta do the gum chewing gum impression. I just think that plainly hasn't worked out with him. I think that, the NFL, when Pete Carroll coached from 2012 through about 2017, was really its unique era, right? A lot of teams succeeded during that time. You had those Jets teams who went to who had those great defense with Rex Ryan. You had those Jim Harbaugh 49ers teams. You had kind of those Eli Manning Giants teams. You had kind of the Pete Carroll region of boom teams. Teams were very different back in the day. They ran the ball. Quarterbacks had to be good, but they didn't have to be elite. It was easier to have a good defense. Things were different. And I feel like now Pete Carroll is still kind of going with that mindset, but the times have changed. The defensive identity is a lot different. I mean, drafting Jordan Brooks in the first round, probably in 2012 is probably a great move, but nowadays it's like, okay, you have Bobby Wagner, another linebacker in the first is very questionable. And with defense, it's pass rushing. You need pass rushing now. And the Legion of Boom, and I don't want to criticize the Legion of Boom because they're top tier defense of all time. They never really had an excellent pass rush. Yeah, Bruce Irvin was nice, but they didn't really have a top tier guy. So I don't think Pete Carroll's adjusted to that. And I just think a lot of the way he thinks is kind of outdated, unfortunately. And I think that the team is just kind of bland and blah. Like when they beat the 49ers this past Sunday, that was not a pretty win. It was like safeties, special teams touchdowns. I'm like, what is going on? That's just not an efficient way to win football. And you have Russell Wilson, who's fantastic. And I just don't feel like I feel like Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson have a good relationship. I just don't think he's really helped him. I think Pete Carroll's trying to rebuild his defense instead of kind of rebuilding the team. I think that's hurt him. I do think that maybe he could still coach in the NFL somewhere. I think that he is a really good players coach. The way he talks about the young guys, gotta in all seriousness, I could see him going to, I don't know, like if the Vikings fire Mike Zimmer, maybe goes there as defensive coordinator or something like that. Or a team who has like a terrible defense like the Falcons. I think they could use someone like him. I don't think that's like a terrible idea. I think he still has some things that are good about him. I just think it's the times have changed around Pete Carroll. And unfortunately, it's kind of tough to see because I love those Legion of Boom teams, but I think he could still been successful. I just don't think he really adjusted properly.
Yeah, I definitely think his adjustment to the new style of NFL has really been his main downfall, especially for the Seahawks in general. I feel like he tried to held on to the Legion of Boom too long. That really screwed him over for the future. And not only that, but his draft selections the past couple of years, especially in the first round, have been absolutely horrible. Like the only player he's really hit on in the past couple of years has been DK Metcalf. But then you have guys like Rashad Penny, who's turns out is already a bust. Jordan Brooks has been okay, but I think there's better options at the time. And then they don't have a first round pick this year or last year, and I think this year as well because of the Jamal Adams trade, which Jamal Adams has been good, but 2 first round picks has not been what Jamal Adams has been worth so far, in my opinion. Maybe 1 first round pick, but definitely not 2. But no, I like what you said. I feel like he has been focusing on rebuilding this great defense instead of really helping out Russell Wilson. I think he's too focused on making a new Legion of Boom instead of realizing he has one of the best quarterbacks of this generation in Russell Wilson and kind of building around him, especially the offensive line, which has been heavily neglected throughout his entire career, it still blows my mind how they haven't figured that out yet, like 10 seasons into his career. And I think the Seahawks, the past couple of years, they've been like a 10-9 win team, but this year they're really showing like they're not good at all. And that's really bad for them as well because they would have like a top 5 draft pick this year. That's going to go to the Jets for the Jamal Adams trade. So it's a mess right now in Seattle. They got a win against San Francisco, but they're still sitting at 4-8 on the year. Russell Wilson, he's come back and he hasn't looked like the Russell Wilson we know and love, probably because of the injury. Chris Carson, before he got hurt, has been pretty disappointing. So I just definitely think Pete Carroll's style of the NFL, he really hasn't adapted to the new game, I feel like, which has changed a lot since 2012, the Legion of Boom era. But if he doesn't ever have like a coaching job in the NFL again, he can always be like a spokesperson for like bubble gum or something like that. Maybe some gum companies like Extra or something. I don't know.
Sure. Oh my God. Mason went with a low blow there. I thought you were going to say, oh, spokesperson with like the NFL. I'm like, oh, that could be cool. But no. I like what you said about drafting. What do you think of the Jamal Adams trade? Because I know the popular thing is to do is to be like, hey, Jamal Adams sucks. But like, I don't know. I like him. I think he's a good player. And I like the trade when they made it. I just don't think they surrounded him. Like, what's your thoughts on that trade?
Yeah, at the time the trade seemed good just because it seemed like they could still be a contending team. But now looking back on it, it's not looking good at all. Not because Jamal Adams is a bad player, it's just how much they gave up for him. I mean, if it turns out the Seahawks keep playing this bad and they could have had a top 5 pick, I think that's going to be like really screw them over for the future because I think Jamal Adams is good, but he's even out for the rest of the year. That happened last year as well. I feel like I don't know if people talk about that. He has injury issues, which I don't think people talk about enough. And he's already said he's going to miss the rest of this year. But no, I don't think Jamal Adams is a bad player. I just think the trade, especially for their timeline, does not fit. Especially considering how bad they are, they probably need to go in a rebuilding phase, and I don't think Jamal Adams is like that. But like we're saying, I mean, Pete Carroll trying to rebuild the Legion of Boom. I think he looked at Jamal Adams like the next Cam Chancellor, and that kind of screwed him over for like just rebuilding and adapting to the new NFL.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly not a terrible comparison with Adams and Chancellor, but like he hasn't surrounded him with any corners or pass
Mm-hmm.
rushers. So
Trey
yeah.
Flowers.
Oh, Quandre Diggs is Pretty nice. All right, Mason. So whenever I talked about the Vikings and the record predictions, I always talked about their offense. You got Kirk Cousins, he's been pretty good. Dalvin Cook's been great. Even though he's injured, I think he's been great. Justin Jefferson's fantastic. Adam Thielen, though, has kind of been disappointing. I want to know your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I think Adam Thielen's kind of like regressed a little bit ever since his big breakout year, I believe 3 years ago. Um, I don't know. I think Adam Thielen's kind of at that point where he's not going to be that superstar wide receiver he was a couple years ago and a Pro Bowl receiver, but I think he'll like be a solid receiver. But this year he has been pretty disappointing. Usually he has a knack for finding the end zone. Even if he can't get the yards, he has a knack for just being in the end zone. He really hasn't been doing that this year. KJ Osborne, who's their third receiver, has been actually been pretty well. He's kind of outplayed Thielen in some of those games. I think a big part of that is kind of Jefferson taking over that number one role, like solidifying that for sure, because Jefferson's been on an absolute tear recently. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is just him like taking like kind of like a backseat for Jefferson, and also just like him kind of getting up there in age. I think he doesn't have the same explosiveness that he once had 3 years ago. He still has pretty great route running, still has good hands, but he's not as fast as he once was back in like 2018, 2019, which I think which I've noticed a lot about him. Because usually he was the type of guy to like get open and he kind of like burn you to get in the end zone. But now he's kind of just a possession receiver almost, where he catches it, it's kind of where he'll be at. Um, Kind of like a Julian Edelman or like a Larry Fitzgerald type of player, where they're gonna get those big chunk yards, but they're not gonna really extend the play after that. So yeah, I think a big part of that is just like his age and also just him taking a back seat for Jefferson.
Yeah, I love that Larry comparison. I was actually going to say that, but then you said, so yeah, it's sad to see because Adam Thielen's peak was so short, but it was really fun to watch. I think that he still has some value. It's just, I think, like you said, he's kind of regressing. I could see him honestly going to a new team next year. I don't know who would need a wide receiver like him. I'm trying to think, maybe like Baltimore would be really nice. But yeah, I don't think there's a ton more to say. I think you covered it like perfectly. I just think it's kind of regression. And Justin Jefferson is so fun to watch. I'm interested to see where his career goes because already it's off to a fantastic start. It's been really cool to watch. All right, Mason, who's your last person you have?
Last person, we always talk about the head coach of this team, but it's also going to be in the same division as you, a division rival, same position. I will let you talk about Allen Robinson, how he's been pretty disappointing this year.
I mean, I don't think that's a fault of his. I just think he's with some terrible quarterback play. Justin Fields has been really bad this season at times. I don't think it's fully on Fields, but he's kind of one read. He's not really expanding things. And I don't think you can really blame him. And then whenever Allen Robinson's in the game, he always like a catch by Fields because Fields he's not been that great. He could be great, and I hope he is because he's fun to watch when he's good. But when he's great, he only has like when he has like his kind of Justin Field games, it's only like 6 completions. So Allen Robinson usually gets like one or two, so like a third of that. And then you have Andy Dalton, who I mean, he's fine. So I don't know. I don't blame Allen Robinson. I've seen the name thrown out there a lot. I'm just like the dude got franchise tagged this past off season. He was kind of angry about it. He kind of retweeted some tweets about the franchise tag being like stupid. So I kind of feel bad for him. I wonder if some of that's kind of lack of effort. And I think a lot of it has to do with the defensive schemes. It's like, well, teams know that the quarterbacks the Bears have is like not to fear. So I think some teams like just double on Robinson or put the best corner on him. It's like, okay, what are you gonna do? And these QBs and Fields and Dalton going to the second, third reads, yeah, they'll be fine at it, but they struggle. So I think it's more of a team scenario than Allen Robinson. I'd love to see him on a different team. I think a team maybe like the Dolphins. I think two would be slightly an upgrade or something like that would be fun. But yeah, I think it's more the team around Allen Robinson than him himself.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think Allen Robinson is, it's kind of like the Barkley situation where he has been a little bit disappointing, but I think a big part of that has to do with his overall team, and especially Matt Nagy completely destroying that Bears offense every week somehow. I don't know how he still has a job, but other than that, yeah, I like what you said about Fields and Andy Dalton really not helping him out. I also think I really like what you said too. I think a big part of the reason that he hasn't been too amazing this year is just a lack of effort, and I don't really blame him just because like he doesn't want to be there. It's pretty obvious. He's just playing to probably get money and play for a new contract. And it really sucks too because he was in for a big payday, I feel like, this past offseason. I think he'll still get a big payday this offseason, but I don't think it'll be as big just because he hasn't been as good. So teams can leverage that against him. But no, I don't know. A team like the Raiders, the Dolphins, the Ravens, some team in the AFC, I think like that could really use him. Um, and I think he really needs to like push for a trade this offseason if the Bears do franchise tag him again. I really hope the Bears don't though, because it's just so dumb. They're basically just holding him hostage for there. He doesn't even fit the timeline. It just makes no sense. But yeah, free A Rob for sure. We need to get that trending. Free Allen Robinson.
Exactly. Yeah, he needs to go somewhere else because he has a lot of potential. All right, Mason.
Mhm.
So for the last person I don't have a player coach. I don't really have. It's a slate of games. The primetime games this year, especially Sunday night, have been. Take it away, Mason. I'm interested to hear what you say because we talk about this in the prediction series, but I wanted to mention here in the podcast.
Yeah, no, the NFL has been like pretty horrible about these primetime games. And I understand before like the season, they don't really understand how these teams will play, but you have like multiple weeks in advance to flex these games and change them. Like, for example, I ranted about this so many times. I feel like I definitely talked about this in podcasts. This is about a month ago. I kept complaining about how Geno Smith played in 3 straight primetime games. Geno Smith. Also, the fact that the Seahawks have 5 primetime games this year compared to the Cardinals, who have 2, is absurd. It makes no sense to me. The Cardinals are the best team in the NFL right now. The Seahawks are one of the worst, but yet they get more primetime games. It makes no sense. And it's just like there's no balance. It's always the same teams. Like I feel like every week we always see the same teams on primetime. It's always the Rams. It's always the Steelers. It's
Cowboys,
yeah,
Saints.
the Cowboys, even the Seahawks. It's just ridiculous. It's like we need new teams. The Chiefs, they're always on primetime. And I feel like and even the matchups have been horrible. Like no one wants to watch the Broncos and Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. It just makes no sense. Like we know the Chiefs are probably going to win by a good amount. They did. Um, I mean, there's some good primetime games, obviously. Like you had the Chiefs and Ravens earlier this year. That game was fantastic. You had the Raiders and Cowboys on Thanksgiving, which was great. But I don't know. For a majority of it, it's just been really disappointing. I mean, no one wants to watch Geno Smith in 3 straight primetime games. And then no one wants to watch oh my gosh, it was just like even the 49ers and Colts game, like that was a solid game, but I feel like the 49ers even get a lot of primetime games compared to some other teams. Like, I don't know, it just makes no sense to me.
My issue is they don't flex. So this week
Hmm.
you have Bears Packers Sunday night. Okay, NFL. Yeah, it's the Bears Packers, but the Bears have been total. Well, they're just I wouldn't say garbage. They've been disappointing.
Yeah.
The Packers are gonna crush them. You could flex Bills, Buccaneers. You have the Buffalo Bills who are 7-5, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 9-3. Two teams who almost played in the Super Bowl last year. Could have flexed that. You have 49ers Bengals, two teams who are very close records. Could flex that. I just think the flexing is an issue with them. And it's like I just think that the NFL needs to really know what's popular. It seems very outdated the way they schedule games. It's like they need to get up with the trends with the new popular teams. And I don't know. I think that they're still trying to hold on and promote these guys. And I think it's backfiring because people are disappointing. And I also think the broadcasting now, I'm going into sports broadcasting, so kind of personal to me in a way. I think Thursday night's great. I love Troy Aikman and Joe Buck. I think they're good. I've been disappointed with the Sunday night performances here from Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth. Al Michaels, I think, has kind of regressed, if you will. He's been commentating for such a long time. I think he commentated that famous Ice Bowl game in the Olympics. I mean, he's been doing this for I think like 20 plus years, and he's definitely one of the all-time greats. But like the all-time greats, there's a time where they regress, and I think that's kind of him this season. I just kind of tune in. He kind of lacks that energy. As someone who's watched him a ton, he just kind of doesn't have that same enthusiasm. Chris Collinsworth is fine. And they've had Mike Tirico on a bit more, so I don't think the broadcasting's been that great. And then Monday Night Football, you have the normal crew, which is fine. And then you have the Manning Brothers cast, which I'm sorry, but has been disappointing. Yeah, Peyton and Eli are great guys, they're funny, but half the time when the game's going on, I'm talking about random stuff instead of the actual game. So I don't know. I know I'm gonna be very unpopular with the Manning Brother cast opinion. There's some funny moments, and I like Peyton and Eli, but half the time they're like talking to like I don't know famous actors, and like the game's going on. I'm talking about like one time they like salad with I don't know whatever, but it's just made that up. But you know what I mean? I don't know. I think the commentating has been kind of going downhill. I think the NFL needs to change it up. They need to figure out Monday night. I think I would love to see Peyton Manning broadcast the game, but like in the booth. I think the at home stuff, I don't know if works the best. People like it though, so maybe that's the main thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely, yeah, Monday night, not even talking about the Manning brothers cast, which is a whole nother thing. But I just think that Monday Night Football has been really bad, commentating wise, in my opinion, for the past couple of years now. Now they have like the weird graphics they show. It's like the bowling alley graphics. That's just so weird. I don't like that at all. It makes no sense to me.
What? Oh no.
It's like I always go on my YouTube and there's always this like one YouTube channel who keeps reposting like the weird graphics and the titles are always like, what is this?
Is the
Like,
channel DK Metcalf or
yeah,
Patrick Surtain? Yeah.
it's hilarious, but I don't know. I feel like yeah, like you said, commentating has been not even primetime games. I mean, there's just been like I feel like I've talked about this dude a lot too. Mark Sanchez, I'm sorry, this is just another whole side thing. If you want to talk about disappointing this year, Mark Sanchez as a commentator, every time he talks about the Cardinals, he always talks about basketball. He like references basketball. It makes no sense. It's like it's the NFL. He's like basketball on turf. I'm like, okay, let's compare the Cardinals to I don't know, like another NFL team, not the Phoenix Suns. It makes no sense. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely. But then you have some good commentators still in the NFL, like Gus. What's his name? Gus Johnson. I believe the college football commentator sometimes fills in for Fox on the NFL. He's fantastic. Love him. But yeah, no. Sunday night, like you said, energy's lacking. Thursday night, always consistent with Aikman and Buck. And then Monday night's a whole disaster. I feel like they really need to reshape Monday Night Football back to its old roots.
Yeah, Drew Brees was on commentating one night. And I'm like, okay, this isn't the best, but there's potential. And I'd love to see him and Peyton Manning. The two are very close.
Hmm.
And like the stuff with the Manning brothers is, I think that Peyton and Eli, they're great guys and they're funny, but they're talking not about the game. It's almost like a podcast. And I think sometimes that's funny. You have some cool moments when they're like Julian Edelman on and he talked about like Patriot stuff. I'm like, that's neat for like a show, but there's a game going on. So I don't know. It's just weird, but I would love to see maybe. I think Peyton Manning should get promoted to like the Monday night. I would love to see him. And Drew Brees, that'd be really cool to see. I know also, I think it was Akeem Talib did a couple broadcasts, like I think last year. He did like a
Hmm.
couple Cardinals games last year. I think he did that Cardinals Dolphins game. So I'd love to see him. I don't know. We'll kind of see, and that'll do it, everyone, for this podcast episode. Last week's was very long, so I wanted to do definitely a shorter episode. Um, Mason, how are you feeling about this week of football?
Pretty excited. Really excited for the Monday night game, obviously. Rams Cardinals, that'll be a showdown. Bills Buccaneers, really excited for that.
Mm.
49ers Bengals, I think that has potential to be pretty good. And then Packers Bears, not excited for that at all. I will be very, very distantly watching that blowout.
Yeah, I love how we got on this huge rant, and Mason's just like, I'm excited for Monday night, but that's the Cardinals game. So yeah, we'll be doing the prediction video. Hope y'all are enjoying this series as we continue the grind. And as always, we'll be covering football, and take care, everyone.